Hello guys, and welcome back to Expensive Coins History Channel. Before we begin, if you're new here, please hit that subscribe button right now and tap that notification bell so you never miss a single video, because what we uncover on this channel could be sitting in your pocket, your drawer, or an old jar in the back of a closet. You do not want to miss that. Now, let us get into it. Imagine holding a coin in your hand, a coin that millions of people spent, lost, dropped in fountains, or gave to vending machines without ever giving it a second look. A coin so ordinary on the surface that nobody would ever think twice about it. 5 cents. That is all most people see. But what if that same coin, that exact same little piece of copper and nickel you've been ignoring your entire life, turned out to be worth $94,000? Not a misprint. Not an exaggeration. $94,000 for a nickel. And it came out a year when over 500 million of them were made. That is the story we are telling today. The 1983 Denver Mint Jefferson Nickel. One of the most deceptive, most misunderstood, and most wildly valuable small coins in all of American numismatic history. And I promise you, by the time this video is over, you will never look at a nickel the same way again. Let's start with a little bit of history, because to understand why this coin is so extraordinary, you need to understand the world it was born into. The year was 1983. Ronald Reagan was in the White House. The economy was climbing out of one of the worst recessions since the Great Depression. Unemployment had just peaked at over 10%, and people across America were watching every penny, literally. Meanwhile, over at the United States Mint in Denver, Colorado, workers were doing what they did every single day: feeding blank metal discs into massive presses and stamping out millions upon millions of Jefferson Nickels, hour after hour, day after day. Nobody working that floor thought they were making history. They were making change, pocket change, and they were making a lot of it. The Denver Mint alone struck 536,726,276 nickels in 1983. Say that number out loud. 536 million. In a single year, from a single mint. That is more coins than most nations have ever produced of any denomination in their entire history. So how on earth does a coin from a $500 million run become worth nearly $100,000? The answer, as always with rare coins, is in the details most people never look for. Here is the secret that separates coin collectors from coin millionaires. It is not just about what a coin looks like on the surface. It is about what happened the moment that coin was struck and whether that moment was perfect. With Jefferson Nickels, there is a designation that changes everything. Collectors call it full steps. And once you understand what full steps means, you will understand exactly why the 1983 D nickel is the kind of coin that makes grown people tremble when they hold one. On the reverse side of every Jefferson nickel, you see Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's legendary Virginia estate. The home he designed himself, the building that reflects his genius as an architect and a thinker. It is a beautiful design created by Felix Schlagback in 1938, and it has graced every single Jefferson nickel since that year. At the base of Monticello, there is a staircase, steps leading up to the entrance of the building. And those steps, those tiny, delicate architectural details at the very bottom of the reverse design, are where fortunes are made or lost in the Jefferson Nickel series. A full steps coin is one where all 5 or 6 of those steps are completely and cleanly struck, with clear, sharp, unbroken lines separating each individual step from the one above it and below it. No bleeding, no merging, no softness. Every step crisp, every line defined, exactly as the engraver intended. Sounds simple, right? It is anything but. In 1983, the Denver Mint was dealing with something that would define the entire issue for generations of collectors. The strike quality that year was, to put it plainly, a disaster. Not because of carelessness, not because of incompetence, but because of the way the dies were set up and the way the metal flowed under the press. The 1983 issue suffered from a production-wide weak strike that affected the overwhelming majority of coins coming off the presses. We're talking about a systemic problem that touched virtually every single coin in that $500 million run. The metal was not fully filling the die cavities at the bottom of the Monticello design. The steps were mushy, incomplete, blended together into an indistinct blur. If you pick up a random 1983 D nickel today, the odds are overwhelming that those steps look like a smear rather than a staircase. Now think about that for a moment. 536 million coins struck, and almost every single one of them has a weak, incomplete strike on the most critical detail collectors look for. That means the number of 1983 D nickels that actually came out of those presses with full, sharp, complete steps is almost incomprehensibly small. We're not talking about a small percentage. We're talking about a statistical rarity so extreme that professional grading services like PCGS and NGC, organizations that have handled millions upon millions of coins over decades, have certified only a handful of 1983D full steps nickels at the highest grade levels. At the MS-67 full steps grade, the population is so thin you could count the known survivors on your fingers. That is not a metaphor. That is the documented reality. And here's where the story gets even more fascinating. Unlike older rare coins, where rarity comes from low mintage, the 1983D is a paradox. The mintage is enormous. The coins are everywhere. You can find circulated 1983D nickels in change jars and old collections at every flea market and estate sale in America. But the condition rarity, the survival of a perfectly struck, fully preserved, uncirculated example with all steps sharp and all surfaces pristine, that is something else entirely. It is the numismatic equivalent of finding a perfect diamond in a mountain of gravel. The gravel is everywhere. The diamond almost never is. There is something else you need to know about 1983 specifically, and this is a detail that separates the truly educated collector from the casual one. In 1982 and 1983, the United States Mint did not produce mint sets for collectors. Let that sink in. Mint sets are the special annual packages the Mint sells directly to coin enthusiasts, containing uncirculated examples of every coin struck that year. They're the primary source for collector-quality coins in modern issues. But for 2 consecutive years in the early 1980s, the Mint stopped producing them entirely. That means there was no official channel through which collectors could acquire pristine, never circulated 1983D nickels directly from the source. Every uncirculated example that exists today had to be plucked directly from bankrolls or mint bags, saved by luck or foresight by someone who had the knowledge to set it aside before it could be spent. The condition vacuum this created is unlike anything else in the modern nickel series. High-grade 1983D nickels are scarce, not just because they were weakly struck, but because nobody was systematically saving them when they were new. Now, let us talk about what this coin looks like when you are holding the right one. On the obverse, you have the classic Felix Schlag portrait of Thomas Jefferson, facing left. The motto, "I in God we trust," curves along the left rim. The word liberty stands on the right, and below that, the date 1983. Just beneath that date, you will find the small letter D, the mint mark indicating Denver. On a high-grade example, Jefferson's hair, the details of his collar, the sharp lines of his facial features should all be crisp and fully defined. There should be original mint luster flowing across the surfaces, that cartwheel shimmer that only comes from a coin that has never been touched by circulation. Turn it over and look at Monticello. The columns, the dome, the windows should all be sharp. And then lower your eyes to the base of the building, to those steps. If every step is there, every line clean and complete, you may be holding something extraordinary. The coin measures 21.2 millimeters in diameter and weighs exactly 5 grams. Its composition is 75% copper and 25% nickel, the same alloy that has been used for Jefferson Nickels since 1946. The edge is plain, with no reading. These are all characteristics of a standard coin. Nothing unusual at all to the uninformed eye. But inside that absolutely ordinary exterior lives a rarity that the numismatic world has come to recognize and pursue with serious intensity. Professional coin graders at PCGS and NGC evaluate these coins on a scale from 1 to 70. For the 1983D, finding a coin that grades MS-65 full steps is already considered a significant accomplishment. Getting to MS-66 full steps puts you in territory where even experienced dealers get excited. And at MS-67 full steps, you're in the realm where five-figure prices become six-figure dreams. The auction record for this date and grade combination stands as a testament to just how rare perfect examples truly are. When one comes to market, serious collectors do not hesitate. They bid with conviction because they know that another one may not appear for years, possibly decades. There is a lesson in the 1983 D nickel that goes beyond coin collecting. It speaks to the way value hides in plain sight. It reminds us that rarity is not always about scarcity of production. Sometimes the rarest things are the ones that were made in abundance, but survive perfection almost never. The 1983 D is a coin that was born into a broken system, struck imperfectly hundreds of millions of times, and yet somehow, against every statistical odd, a few examples came through exactly right. Fully struck, fully preserved, waiting for someone with knowledge, patience, and the willingness to look closely at something the rest of the world passed right by. If you have old nickels at home, if you have jars of change sitting on a shelf, if you have ever gone through an estate sale collection or a grandparent's old coin folder, the 1983 D is a date you need to pull out and examine. Check that mint mark. Check those steps. Because somewhere out there, in someone's home right now, there's a 1983 D Jefferson Nickel sitting in a coin folder or a jar or a junk drawer that its owner has no idea is worth more than most cars. That is not a fairy tale. That is a documented numismatic reality. We just spent some serious time with a 1983 D Jefferson Nickel, and I hope your mind is still processing everything we covered, because what we are about to get into right now is just as powerful, just as mind-bending, and in many ways even more personal to the story of American coinage. The second coin in today's video is the 1990 D Jefferson Nickel. Another Denver coin. Another 5-cent piece that billions of people handled, spent, and dismissed without a second thought. Another nickel carrying a secret that most of the world never discovered. And another coin with a value that will genuinely stop you in your tracks before this video is over. So stay right here, because we were just getting started on Chapter 2. Let's go back in time again. The year is 1990. The Cold War is in its final chapter. Germany is being reunified. The first Gulf War is weeks away from beginning. America is in a moment of transition, standing on the edge of a new decade with all the uncertainty and energy that comes with it. And in Denver, Colorado, the mint workers are doing exactly what they were doing 7 years earlier. They're striking nickels. Mountains of them. The Denver Mint produced 663,938,503 nickels in 1990. That number is even larger than the 1983 D mintage. Over 663 million coins bearing that small D mint mark, pouring out of the Denver facility and spreading across the entire nation, dropping into cash registers and piggy banks and parking meters and pockets from coast to coast. And just like in 1983, almost everyone who touched one of those coins saw nothing special. Just another nickel. Just 5 cents. Just something to make change with. But here is what makes the 1990 D story different. And this is something most people watching videos about Jefferson Nickels have never fully heard explained the way it deserves to be. By 1990, the numismatic community was starting to wake up to something important. Collectors who had been paying attention to the full steps phenomenon in Jefferson Nickels were beginning to realize that the modern issues, the coins being struck in the 1980s and into the early 1990s, were producing some of the most conditioned rare coins in the entire series. Not because the mintages were low. Obviously, they were not. But because the combination of high-speed mass production, worn dies, improperly set presses, and the complete absence of quality-focused collector packaging was creating a situation where mint-perfect examples were becoming increasingly difficult to find and document. The 1990 D sits right at the heart of that realization. The full steps challenge of the 1990 D is distinct from the 1983 D in a very specific way, and understanding that distinction is what separates a casual viewer from someone who truly grasps why this coin commands the value it does. With the 1983 D, the problem was systemic from the start. a known production-wide weak strike baked into the entire issue. With the 1990D, the challenge is different. The coin can look deceptively good at first glance. The obverse, Jefferson's portrait, often comes through with reasonable sharpness. The overall appearance of many 1990D nickels can seem solid, even impressive to the untrained eye. But when you bring that coin to a strong light and look carefully at the base of Monticello, when you examine those steps under magnification, what you find in the overwhelming majority of cases is softness, merging incomplete separation between the individual steps. The strike just did not finish the job where it mattered most. The Denver Mint in 1990 was operating at enormous volume. 663 million coins is a production figure that puts incredible strain on every component of the minting process. Dies were down. Presses are calibrated for speed and output, not for the delicate perfection of a collector coin. The planchets, those blank metal discs fed into the presses, move through the machinery at a pace designed for efficiency, not artistry. Under those conditions, the probability of any single coin coming out with every step fully struck, every line sharp, every surface clean and unmarked, was extraordinarily low. It was not impossible because a few examples did survive with that perfection intact, but it was rare in a way that no production number could ever communicate. The 600 million coins in that mintage figure actually make the story of the survivors more dramatic, not less, because they prove that among all those hundreds of millions of strikes, the window of perfection was almost unimaginably narrow. Now let us talk about what you are looking for when you examine a 1990D nickel, because that knowledge is what this channel is all about. The obverse carries the same Felix Schlag portrait of Thomas Jefferson that has appeared on the nickel since 1938. Jefferson faces left, his profile rendered with fine detail in the hair along the jaw and neck. The words, "I in God we trust," curve along the left side of the coin. The word liberty appears on the right. Below that, the date 1990, and just beneath the date, the D mint mark confirming Denver production. On a genuinely high-grade example, the fields, the flat areas of the coin surrounding the portrait should have that unmistakable original mint luster. That flowing, almost liquid brightness that you can only see on a coin that has never made contact with another surface in circulation. Even a single trip through someone's pocket can begin to disturb that surface in ways that are immediately apparent to a trained eye. Flip the coin over and you are face to face with Monticello. That magnificent neoclassical facade with its columns, its triangular pediment, its dome rising above the roofline. It is one of the most recognizable buildings in American history, and it has been faithfully reproduced on the Jefferson Nickel reverse for nearly 90 years. Look at the columns. Look at the windows. Look at the architectural details in the triangular area above the columns. On a well-struck coin, all of those elements should have definition and clarity. But then, and this is where everything either comes together or falls apart, bring your eye down to the very base of the building. Those horizontal lines at the bottom of Monticello represent the steps of the entrance staircase. Count them. Look at the spaces between them. Are those lines clean and fully separated from each other with sharp, unbroken borders? Or do they blur together, soften at the edges, merge in ways that suggest the metal did not fully flow into the deepest recesses of the die? If every step is there, crisp and complete, you are holding a full steps coin. And a full steps 1990D in the highest certified grades is one of the rarest modern Jefferson nickels that exists in the entire collector market today. What makes the 1990D particularly compelling from a collector's psychology standpoint is the era it represents. People who were born in the early to mid-1970s, who are today in their late 40s and early 50s, grew up with 1990 coins. These coins were in their lunch money, in the change from their first jobs, in the jars on their bedroom dressers. There is a personal connection to this era that resonates deeply with collectors in the 35 to 65 plus age range. When you hold a 1990D nickel, you are not just holding a rare coin. You are holding a piece of a specific moment in your own life. You are holding 1990. The music, the news, the feeling of that year is encoded somehow in that small round piece of metal. And when that personal connection meets numismatic rarity, the result is a coin that people do not just want to own. They want to possess. There is a difference, and the auction results reflect it. Here is something else that is critical to understanding why these 1990D survivors command such serious attention. In the world of coin grading, every single grade level on the 70-point scale represents a meaningful distinction. The jump from MS65 to MS66 is significant. The jump from MS66 to MS67 is enormous. And the full steps designation on top of any of those grades multiplies the significance dramatically. At MS65 full steps, a 1990D is a genuinely collectible coin with real premium over a standard example. At MS66 full steps, you're looking at a coin that experienced collectors actively compete to acquire. At MS67 full steps, the population known to exist is so small that when one surfaces at auction, it generates the kind of bidding activity that reminds everyone watching why rare coins are a serious asset class and not just a hobby. There is a discipline and a patience required to find coins like this. You cannot walk into it casually. You need to know the series. You need to understand what full steps looks like and what it does not look like. You need to examine coins carefully under proper lighting, ideally with magnification, looking past the obvious surface characteristics to the fine details that make or break a coin's designation. But here is the reward for that discipline. The person who develops that knowledge and applies it consistently is the person who occasionally, in a bankroll or an estate collection or a dealer's junk box, pulls out something that everyone else overlooked, something that was sitting right in front of the world the entire time. The story of the 1990 D Jefferson Nickel is ultimately a story about attention, about what happens when you slow down in a world that moves too fast and actually look at the things in front of you. Most of the 663 million nickels struck in Denver that year are worth exactly 5 cents today. They did their job. They circulated, they changed hands thousands of times, they wore down, they got spent. But a tiny number of them, a number so small it is almost philosophical when you consider it against that massive mintage, survived in a state of perfection that their time never intended for them. They came through exactly right, and then someone, somewhere along the way, recognized what they had and set them aside. And because of that recognition, because of that moment of attention in a world full of distraction, those coins became something extraordinary. Both coins we have discussed today, the 1983D and the 1990D Jefferson Nickel, share that same essential truth. They were born in abundance. They were treated as ordinary. And they became rare because perfection, even when it is mass-produced, almost never survives. The handful that did survive are now among the most sought-after modern coins in American numismatics, and they are still out there, in collections, in jars, in albums, in rolls that have never been opened, waiting for the right person to find them. So go check your coins. Go look at your old collections. Pull out every 1983D and every 1990D you can find. Get a loop, get a good light, and look at those steps on the back of Monticello. Because the next coin we talk about on this channel that is worth a life-changing amount of money could be one that is already in your possession. And now, the moment you have been waiting for. The values that make everything we talked about today real and concrete and genuinely staggering. The 1983 D Jefferson Nickel, in the highest certified grade with full steps designation, carries a documented value of $94,000. The 1990 D Jefferson Nickel, in its finest known certified condition with full steps designation, carries a documented value of $70,000. Two nickels, $164,000 combined. Both came from a Denver mint press during years when hundreds of millions of coins were being struck every single day. Both were almost certainly spent by people who had no idea what they were holding. And both stand today as proof that the most valuable things in this world are often the ones hiding in the most ordinary places. If you found this video valuable, if it changed the way you look at the coins in your possession, please like this video right now, share it with someone who collects coins or someone who you think should start, And if you have not already subscribed to this channel, do it now. Because this is just the beginning. There are more coins out there with stories just like these. And we're going to find every single one of them together.